And he was known as the Merchant of Venom. But Don Rickles' insults always left his victims laughing. Rickles died yesterday in Los Angeles.
For 6 decades, Don Rickles made a living insulting people to their faces, and somehow they walked away laughing. Presidents, Hollywood stars, and even some of the toughest men in Las Vegas willingly became his targets. But behind that fearless stage persona was a far more complicated man, one who experienced devastating loss and spent much of his life trying to prove himself. This is the story of the man behind the insults, a quiet kid from Queens who learned to fight with words. Donald J. Rickles was born on May 8, 1926 in New York City and raised in Jackson Heights, Queens, as the only child of Max and Etta Rickles.
How much you weigh, big fella?
He hit them right between the eyes.
200 on the left side of your ass, you weigh 200.
An equal opportunity.
His father worked as an insurance salesman, keeping the family comfortably within the working middle class and far removed from the glamorous entertainment world Don would eventually conquer. At Newtown High School, Rickles wasn't known as an exceptional student, but his personality quickly stood out. He became president of the school's dramatic society, offering an early glimpse of where his talents would eventually take him. Even as a boy, Don was famous for his quick comebacks. What began partly as a way to defend himself from teasing soon became his greatest weapon. He discovered that if he could respond faster and funnier than the person insulting him, he could completely change the situation. His mother, Etta, became one of his strongest supporters, encouraging his ambitions even when show business showed little interest in him. After high school, Rickles enlisted in the United States Navy during World War II. Serving aboard the USS Siren, a torpedo boat tender, he traveled through the Panama Canal into the Pacific, including Papua New Guinea and the Philippines. Years later, Rickles remembered those deployments without nostalgia, describing the brutal tropical heat and humidity that exhausted everyone aboard. Don Rickles was honorably discharged from the Navy in 1946 after roughly 2 years of service. Like millions of young men returning from World War II, he came home without a clear idea of what came next.
And Bubba, with a few almonds on your face, we got candy.
Life at sea had exposed him to men from completely different backgrounds, and the constant good-natured ribbing among sailors sharpened instincts Don had already developed growing up in Queens. Without realizing it, he was becoming even quicker with words. But comedy wasn't his plan. After leaving the Navy, Don enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, determined to become a serious actor. He dreamed of performing Shakespeare and building the kind of respected dramatic career that seemed completely removed from the insult comedy that would eventually make him famous. After graduating in 1948, however, reality hit hard. The acting career Don imagined simply didn't materialize. He spent years chasing auditions and accepting small television parts that provided occasional work but little momentum. Casting directors repeatedly passed him over, and the distance between the serious actor he had trained to become and the performer Hollywood actually wanted continued growing. It became one of the most frustrating periods of his life. Long before the standing ovations and celebrity friendships, Rickles experienced rejection after rejection with little evidence that success was coming. Desperate for stability, he even briefly followed his father's path and tried selling insurance. That didn't work either. Don later joked about being a terrible salesman, but beneath those jokes was genuine uncertainty about whether he would ever find something he was truly meant to do.
The black people belong in this country. When the show is over, clean up these tables.
Throughout those difficult years, his mother Etta remained one of his strongest supporters. She encouraged him to keep going rather than settle for a career that clearly didn't suit him. Eventually, Don began performing stand-up comedy in small clubs, initially less as a calculated career move than as a way to earn money and get in front of audiences. He worked clubs in New York, Miami, and later Los Angeles, gradually developing a reputation for sharp material and even sharper timing. The rooms were often small and unforgiving. Audiences drank, talked among themselves, and sometimes barely paid attention to the comedian on stage. Night after night, Don learned how to survive distracted and occasionally hostile crowds. Yet he still hadn't discovered the style that would make him famous. For years, Rickles continued refining his timing while privately hoping his dramatic acting breakthrough might eventually arrive. It never came in the way he had imagined. Instead, his real breakthrough happened almost by accident. One night, faced with an unruly audience, Don abandoned his prepared material and began responding directly to the people interrupting him. The quick comebacks he had developed as a kid in Queens and sharpened during his Navy years suddenly became more entertaining than his actual jokes.
How big is your part in the movie, seriously?
Well, when you see it.
Are you like a co-star?
You got 750.
You're not like an extra. Are you like an extra?
I'm not an extra.
Do you
I'll
have
stand in the
lines?
back.
The accidental birth of Don Rickles as an insult comic began with a problem almost every nightclub comedian faced: hecklers. Audience members would interrupt his routines, talk over his jokes, and deliberately try to throw him off. Instead of ignoring them, Don fought back. He began firing improvised insults directly at the people interrupting him, delivering each comeback with enough humor and warmth to keep the room laughing rather than becoming hostile. Almost immediately, Rickles noticed something important. Audiences enjoyed these spontaneous exchanges far more than the carefully prepared jokes he had brought on stage. So he stopped fighting it and leaned into what came naturally. By the early 1950s, Rickles had increasingly built his act around insulting audience members. Anyone who irritated him might suddenly become a hockey puck, a phrase that eventually became one of his trademarks. The approach was risky. Traditional comedians could write jokes, test them, improve them, and repeat successful material night after night. Rickles couldn't rely on that safety net. His performances depended on reading strangers in real time and instantly finding something funny to say about them. Every show became a high-wire act. Yet Rickles proved remarkably gifted at it. His ability to study someone for only seconds and find the perfect line would remain sharp for decades.
Do you have lines in the movie?
No, I don't have lines. No, I don't have lines. I just stand there and I wet my pants. What do you think I do?
But there was another reason his insults worked. Beneath even his harshest jokes was an unmistakable sense of affection. Rickles wasn't simply trying to humiliate people. His delivery suggested that everyone was participating in the joke together. Audiences understood that behind the attack was someone who actually enjoyed people. That contradiction eventually earned him the ironic nickname, Mr. Warmth. And according to many who knew him personally, the nickname wasn't entirely ironic. Away from the microphone, Rickles developed a reputation as a kind and generous man who treated friends, fellow performers, and crew members with genuine respect. The vicious comedian audiences saw on stage was only one part of him. Still, by the mid-1950s, Rickles remained largely unknown outside the nightclub circuit. Then one ordinary performance changed everything. Rickles was appearing at Murray Franklin's nightclub in Miami Beach when he noticed someone famous sitting in the audience, Frank Sinatra. Sinatra wasn't merely another celebrity, he was one of America's biggest entertainers, surrounded by an intimidating reputation that made most performers think twice before making him the target of a joke. Rickles didn't hesitate. Instead of politely acknowledging Sinatra, he looked directly at him and told him to make himself comfortable and go hit somebody. It was exactly the kind of joke most struggling comedians would have been terrified to make. For Don Rickles, it was about to become the joke that changed his life. For a moment, the room went quiet.
Frank Sinatra, God rest his soul, was a great man to me. He was a great booster of mine, and I traveled with him to Europe.
Don Rickles had just mocked Frank Sinatra's tough guy reputation directly to his face, and everyone waited to see how one of America's most powerful entertainers would respond. Then Sinatra burst out laughing. That moment began an unlikely friendship that would last for decades. Sinatra found it refreshing that Rickles treated him like an ordinary person rather than an untouchable celebrity. Before long, he began regularly attending Don's shows, often bringing famous friends with him. Despite Sinatra's reputation for having a quick temper, he seemed to genuinely enjoy becoming one of Rickles's favorite targets. Their exchanges soon became legendary within entertainment circles. Here was Frank Sinatra, a man few people dared disrespect, willingly allowing a struggling nightclub comedian to tear him apart in public. That approval transformed Rickles's career.
And he'd send all the wives, he'd send the wives, go to bed. You gotta go to bed, and you gotta sit with him and drink the vodka, you know, which I didn't mind, but on the third barrel.
Other entertainers noticed how much freedom Sinatra gave him, and Rickles gradually became closely associated with Sinatra's famous circle. Although he was never an official member of the Rat Pack alongside Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and Peter Lawford, Don became something like their unofficial comedian, a trusted friend who could say things to Sinatra almost nobody else dared to say. Sinatra's endorsement carried enormous influence. Once people realized he didn't merely tolerate Rickles but actually loved his act, opportunities began appearing. By the late 1950s, Don had gone from struggling for attention to becoming a rising attraction in Miami and Las Vegas casinos. His reputation spread as audiences discovered a comedian capable of turning almost anyone in the room into part of the show. But nightclub success still wasn't enough to make Don Rickles a household name. For that, he needed television. Producers had already begun noticing him, but there was one major concern. Could Rickles's aggressive style survive outside the loose atmosphere of a nightclub? Television comedy at the time was generally safer, cleaner, and carefully controlled. Rickles was unpredictable. His greatest weapon was improvisation, and nobody knew exactly what he might say once the cameras started rolling. Any doubts about Don Rickles working on television disappeared when he appeared on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson in the 1960s. Instead of giving Carson the polite treatment expected from most guests, Don immediately began firing insults at him. Carson could barely contain his laughter. It was unpredictable, spontaneous television, driven by genuine chemistry rather than rehearsed jokes. Audiences loved it. The appearance transformed Rickles's career. Producers who had once considered his style too aggressive for television suddenly understood its appeal. Carson became one of Don's strongest supporters, repeatedly inviting him back. Before long, a Rickles appearance meant viewers could expect complete chaos. Don became one of late-night television's most popular recurring guests, appearing with Carson dozens of times over the following decades. He also became closely associated with Dean Martin's television programs, particularly the Dean Martin Celebrity Roasts. The format was perfect for him. Surrounded by famous entertainers, Rickles could unleash the merciless but affectionate mockery he had spent years perfecting in nightclubs. During this period, Don also received television shows of his own, including an ABC variety program and later sitcom roles. None became as culturally memorable as his talk show appearances and celebrity roasts, but they kept his face familiar to American audiences throughout the 1960s and 1970s. His career wasn't limited to comedy. Rickles had never completely abandoned his original ambition of acting. He appeared in the 1958 submarine drama Run Silent, Run Deep, and later landed a memorable role in the 1970 World War II film Kelly's Heroes. That project would eventually intersect with his personal life in an unexpected and deeply meaningful way. Because while Don's career was exploding, another part of his life was finally becoming settled. In the 1960s, Rickles met Barbara Sklar. The two married on March 14, 1965, beginning a partnership that would survive more than half a century, an extraordinary achievement in an entertainment industry famous for short-lived marriages. Barbara brought stability to Don's increasingly hectic life. While he traveled constantly between television studios, movie sets, and Las Vegas stages, she became the grounding presence waiting behind the scenes. Friends often describe their relationship as affectionate and remarkably steady. Barbara understood both the performer audiences saw and the quieter man who existed when the spotlight disappeared. Their marriage endured the pressures that destroyed many show business relationships: endless travel, late nights, constant public attention, and the demands of maintaining a career dependent on performing for strangers. And soon their marriage would become something even more important. Don and Barbara were about to start a family. What happened while Don was working thousands of miles from home on Kelly's Heroes would bring him one of the happiest moments of his life and reveal a completely different side of the man audiences knew as Mr. Warmth. Don and Barbara Rickles remained married for more than 50 years, a quieter achievement that friends often considered one of the most meaningful parts of Don's life. Behind the aggressive stage persona was a man who deeply valued stability once he found the right person to share his life with. Their family eventually grew to include 2 children, daughter Mindy and son Larry, who was born on May 12, 1970. Don occasionally joked about Larry being conceived while he was overseas filming Kelly's Heroes in Yugoslavia, sharing the story with the same dry humor he brought to almost everything. But underneath the jokes, family mattered enormously to him. Despite a demanding schedule filled with touring, television appearances, and film work, Don made an effort to remain present in his children's lives. Friends said he drew tremendous strength from Barbara, Mindy, and Larry, who provided a stable home away from the pressure of performing. Growing up surrounded by entertainment, Larry eventually entered the same industry as his father, but chose a very different path. Rather than becoming a performer and living in Don's enormous shadow, Larry worked behind the scenes as a writer and producer. In 1996, he was accepted into a competitive Warner Brothers writers' workshop, helping open the door to professional opportunities. The following year, he joined the writing staff of the successful CBS sitcom Murphy Brown. Larry continued working steadily in television, establishing his own identity without trying to compete with his father's fame. Then, in 2007, father and son finally came together professionally. Larry co-produced a documentary about Don titled Mr. Warmth, the Don Rickles Project. Directed by John Landis, the film combined decades of performance footage with interviews from friends, family members, and fellow entertainers. For audiences who knew Rickles primarily as the ruthless comedian attacking celebrities from a stage, the documentary revealed the much more complicated person behind that image. Don had reportedly resisted the idea of making a documentary about himself for years, but Larry's involvement helped convince him to participate. The decision created something neither man could have fully anticipated. The documentary became both a celebration of Don's extraordinary career and a deeply personal collaboration between father and son. In 2008, it won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Variety, Music or Comedy Special, giving Larry recognition as one of its producers. Don also received an Emmy for his performance in the documentary. After decades of entertaining audiences and becoming one of comedy's most recognizable figures, Don Rickles finally received one of television's highest honors. But perhaps more importantly, he shared that moment with his son. For a father whose entire career had been built around making strangers laugh, working alongside Larry offered something far more personal, proof that the family life he had worked so hard to protect had created a legacy beyond his own name. For Don Rickles, sharing the success of Mr. Warmth with his son became one of the proudest moments of his career. The documentary brought his professional and personal worlds together, allowing Larry to help preserve his father's remarkable life story for future generations. Neither of them knew how little time they had left together. After the documentary's success, Larry continued the respected career he had built as a writer and producer. At only 41, he appeared to have decades ahead of him. But his health eventually began declining in ways the family largely kept private. Then, on December 3, 2011, Larry Rickles died in Los Angeles at just 41 years old. His death was attributed to respiratory failure caused by pneumonia. For Don and Barbara, the loss was devastating. Larry had spent years building a reputation independent of his famous father, and colleagues remembered him for his talent, professionalism, and quiet personality. His death ended a promising career far too soon and left a void within the Rickles family that fame and success could never replace. For Don, the tragedy was especially cruel. His entire public identity had been built around turning uncomfortable moments into laughter. For decades, he had been the man who could take anything thrown at him, respond instantly, and somehow find the joke. But there was no joke for losing his son. Friends noticed a change afterward. Don continued working, appearing before audiences and delivering the rapid-fire insults people expected. He could still walk onto a stage and make an entire room laugh. Yet those closest to him understood that something had changed beneath the surface. Don described Larry as having been at the center of his and Barbara's world. It was an unusually vulnerable admission from someone whose public persona had always projected toughness and fearlessness. According to those close to the family, Don never completely recovered. He carried the grief privately while continuing to perform, rarely allowing audiences to see how deeply the loss affected him. Years later, when Larry's death came up in interviews, Don occasionally admitted that he still hadn't gotten over it. The comedian who always had the perfect comeback had finally encountered something words couldn't fix. Rather than flowers, the Rickles family asked that memorial donations be made to Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. Their decision eventually helped create an endowment fund in Larry's name, allowing his memory to support children and families long after his death. For Don, it became one small way of keeping his son's name alive. But behind every performance that followed, behind every insult and every familiar smile, there remained a grief that audiences could rarely see. Don Rickles lived nearly 6 more years after losing his son, continuing to perform while carrying a grief that few outside his closest circle ever fully witnessed. For a man whose career had been built on fearless humor, simply returning to the stage required a different kind of strength. Even into his 80s, Rickles continued headlining shows with the rapid delivery and sharp timing that had defined him for decades. Colleagues were amazed by his stamina and dedication. Despite his age and personal heartbreak, Don still treated every performance with the seriousness he had brought to small nightclub stages half a century earlier. By then, his unmistakable voice had also introduced him to an entirely new generation. Beginning with Toy Story in 1995, Rickles voiced the sarcastic Mr. Potato Head. Children who had never seen him perform in Las Vegas suddenly knew his voice instantly. He continued playing the character throughout the franchise, and the role became so closely connected to him that archived recordings were later used to keep Mr. Potato Head present after Don's death. Through those difficult final years, Barbara remained beside him. Their marriage had survived more than 5 decades, and after Larry's death, friends said the couple depended on each other more than ever. On April 6, 2017, Don Rickles died at his Los Angeles home at the age of 90, only a month before his 91st birthday. The cause was kidney failure. He left behind Barbara, daughter Mindy, 2 grandchildren, and an entertainment career spanning more than 6 remarkable decades. After his death, tributes poured in from across Hollywood. Comedians remembered him as one of the quickest minds ever to hold a microphone. Actors, directors, and longtime friends remembered something audiences didn't always see: the warmth beneath the insults. Rickles had accomplished something few performers could ever duplicate. He could walk into a room filled with presidents, movie stars, powerful executives, and intimidating celebrities, insult nearly everyone in sight, and somehow leave them laughing. But his legacy extended beyond the jokes. Behind Mr. Warmth was a devoted husband, a proud father, and eventually a grieving parent who continued entertaining strangers even while carrying the greatest loss of his life. Don Rickles had spent decades proving he could make almost anything funny. His final years proved something deeper. Sometimes courage wasn't delivering the perfect comeback. What made Don Rickles unforgettable wasn't simply the insults, it was the warmth underneath them. People willingly sat in the front row knowing he might destroy them in front of hundreds of strangers, yet somehow they often walked away feeling included rather than humiliated. Few comedians have ever managed that balance so successfully. But behind Mr. Warmth was a far more complicated man. Rickles spent years chasing a serious acting career that never happened, only to discover his true talent almost accidentally while fighting back against nightclub hecklers. Even after success finally arrived, the long years of rejection never completely left him. Perhaps that resilience became most important after the death of his son Larry in 2011. It was a loss Don never truly overcame, yet he continued stepping onto stages and making strangers laugh while carrying his grief privately. In the end, Don Rickles' story is about more than a comedian who could insult anyone and somehow get away with it. It's about a working-class kid from Queens who struggled for years, stumbled into the career he was meant for, became one of comedy's most distinctive voices, and discovered that even laughter couldn't protect someone from life's deepest pain. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, comment below with your favorite Don Rickles moment, and subscribe to the channel for more stories from Hollywood's most unforgettable legends. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.